What's up, YouTube? Welcome to this next video on the series Let's Talk. As is usual with the Let's Talk series, there's not a whole lot of code or sometimes never any code. So I hope you come in with that expectation that it's more of a talking series than it is a code series. However, I will be showing you some code for this purpose. But unfortunately, there's only one code example, even though the problems are plentiful and there should have been many more code examples, but I only have one to show you because in the real world, for me, I don't actually see those kind of issues anymore, but I'll try and explain the problems in the other code that I don't have here to show you, right? So today's video is about the null conditional operator. We talked a little bit on this topic in my last video on the iDisposable thing. I'll sort of revisit that a little bit. And then the code example I'll show you is slightly different. And then we'll have some discussion on that. So the null conditional operator is the question mark dot, or in, I think in Kotlin, they call it safe call, which sort of explains the problem. The safe call, as in you're doing it because you want to feel safe. So call this in a safe manner. And I think not just with regards to the null conditional operator, but just generally speaking in programming, I think we are being unnecessarily safe. I think the need to be safe is the problem. Because at least in the way I program, which is more about the programming with intent, if you haven't seen any of that or what you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a link to the entire playlist here. Like 40 or maybe 50 videos now. In that playlist, that's all encompassing programming with intent, which is a large body of work. I don't know if it's because of that, as in the way I program, that I don't ever see the need for it, or it's the way I think, or the combination of the two. All right. So what is the problem with the null conditional operator? I'm going to put it down to being abused or overused. But I guess when you look at your own code, you probably get a better understanding of why you're overusing it, or you're abusing it, or you're just blindly using it without thinking much about your code. And so the takeaway from this video would be, if you are using the null conditional operator, which is sort of, I'm not recommending don't use it at all. What I'm saying is just be mindful of when you use it. Don't blindly use it. And once you've used it, go back and look at that code and sort of think to yourself, what is this code saying to me? What is my intent? If I were to read this code as somebody else, what is that code telling me? Right? What is the intent being expressed by that code? And is that intent what you were intending? In other words, if you program with intent and you're always thinking about what am I really trying to say here by writing this code? What is this code saying? Code talks to you, does it not? Good. So we're on the same page there. So what is that code saying to me? And is that what I was intending to say in the first place? If not, then you need to look at and change the code. So use the null conditional operator wisely, and especially when it comes to the A dot or A question mark dot B question mark dot C. And I've seen a ton of that code. It doesn't occur so much in the code that I'm working on the teams with. But I do code reviews for other teams as well, and I see it a lot there, and it's definitely not being thought out. In many cases, it has caused bugs because it's an inadvertent thing. Because you're not thinking about what you're writing, you don't get compiler errors. You'll potentially not get any runtime issues because you want to be safe. And that excessive kind of desire to be safe has then caused a bug. So I don't know if you've ever seen this in your own code, but maybe you want to go back and look at your code. If you have too many null conditional operators in use, is that the intention, or is it just being safe, right? So don't use it if you don't need it. So if you have a situation, if you remember the last video on disposables, I think out of the three places in which we use like something to dispose, dot dispose, only in one place did we actually need to use a question mark dot dispose. In the other two cases, it was just not required. Like, you could put it there, but that's not required because those things would never be null by the time the dispose is called. So why bother putting a null? Or why confuse the issue? I wouldn't even say why bother. Why confuse the issue by putting in a null conditional operator and now the next guy Okay, why is that going to be null? Let me look at the code. I can't see anywhere, but this could be null. Why has it got a question mark dot? Why not just a dot, right? So that's the basic takeaway, right? The null conditional operator is, safe call operator is, it's okay. If you ask me, would you prefer that this null conditional operator was not in the language? I'd say yes. In my opinion, for all the benefits that it seems to give you, which is hardly any, but all the pain it causes, I'd rather not have it. And that is a lot of features these days in C# ever since, probably 6 or 7, ever since Roslyn. See, once Roslyn came about, Roslyn has given the C# team an easier way to add features, syntactic features. And unfortunately, that kind of gets misused. And that's when I start to not like the feature. I personally like the feature, except I know that I only use it sometimes. But when the problem I see day to day is that it's being abused or misused all the time, then I think to myself, I'd rather not have it because that's causing more problems than it is giving any benefit. All right. Okay. So if you've understood the basic problem I have with null conditional operator and the misuse or overuse or misguided use of it, and that you need to think about what is your code saying after you've used it, like, is that the intention? I'm going to show you this code here. This code borders on the nullable reference types and the null forgiving operator or the null suppression operator, even though that's not the point of the topic here. I'll be using that. So in case you don't know what that is, then I don't intend to explain it here. So you might want to read up on that before watching the rest of the code. All right. So let's take a look at the code here. Some of you might find this code familiar from the logging series. So this is the sort of the program.cs of that project, or the last of that project. And I have an application logger here, a private member, static member, and the variable for it. Right? Now, in my mind, the way I programmed this, the way I've written the code, this application logger is not nullable. Now, this project is not using the non-nullable reference types feature in C# yet. I'll convert it to do that soon. But I'm explaining to you here as the code is, in my mind, this variable will never be null. Now this is program CS, there's main here. So the first thing I do in main is I initialize this variable. And so now this has been initialized. So from this point forward, for the rest of the lifetime of the system, this variable is not null. Then I use it here. And then when I call this insert blog post method, you can see here, it's using it here, right? And I have no reason or desire to verify that this is not null anywhere, because I know the way I'm writing this code here, and my intention is that this will never be null, even though there's no constructor per se in this project. I'm using it as a static. It's initialized sort of soon enough or higher up in the entry point, and from that point forward, it's not null, right? So that is my intention. Now I'm going to turn on the feature of nullable reference types, all right? And if you don't know what that feature is or what I just did in the code there, that's the way to turn on that feature for the entire solution. You can turn it on by file, file by file if it's a large project. And you don't want to turn it on for the whole solution in one shot, or one project for the whole project in one shot. So then you can do it file by file. I'm just turning it on for this entire solution. So I've just uncommented that. All right. Okay, the moment I do that, it gives me this warning. Let me zoom in here and show you what that warning is. It says non-nullable field application logger must contain a non-nullable value when exiting the constructor. Consider declaring the field as nullable. Simple enough. There's no constructor here, so I really don't have an option but to exit the constructor without assigning it. So consider declaring this field as nullable. So I'll do that. Okay, so that's this is nullable. Now, right away, it has already altered my intention. My intention was not that is a nullable field. It's not in my mind. That is in a non-nullable field. I just don't have a way in the language to express that. And so I'm sort of falling prey to my need to be safe and the guidances that I get from, from the code analysis, or be it Sonar or whatever other IDE tools that have this help you. You're trying to get away from these squiggles in your code blindly, and you could inadvertently alter your intention. And I've done that here, thinking, yep, that's going to clear up my issue with that warning. So that's gone, cool. And then I look over here and I get another warning that says application logger may be null here. Dereference of a possibly null reference. All right, why is that? Now, there is such a thing as flow analysis in the C# compiler with regards to this nullable reference types feature. It's a compile time static analysis. So it's looking at your code at compile time. There's no runtime manifestation of that. In other words, no loadings occurring that supports that. It's just a compile time feature. It also disappears. That question mark nullable type disappears. If you've seen the exclamation, the null forgiving or null suppression operator disappears. Right? There's no manifestation of that in actual compiled code. It's the static analysis only. And this flow analysis, I'll show you what that means or looks like here. The idea with flow analysis is the following. This variable has been initialized here. All right. So then I can use it here without wondering or hoping that this is not, even though it's declared as nullable here, I can use it here because it's been initialized here. So you can see, so by doing the flow analysis, you can see that, okay, this was initialized here. So when you use it here, I don't have to warn you about this possibly being null, right? However, when you come here, at that point, and you call this method, seeing that it's a method that is dependent on a member variable, the member variable has been marked as nullable. So over here, you're getting the warning saying, but this could be null, right? Because of this variable. So even though it could have done the flow analysis and saying, okay, this is the only place that's calling this method, it's not null for the time being because the only one that's calling this method is here, and this over here, this thing's already been initialized before calling the method. So I can look at that, I can see that, and doing the flow analysis, it should be able to see that. That could change in future versions of C#. Compiler could become smarter in the flow analysis, which is actually bound to happen over time, except at this point in time, it doesn't know that, it's not doing that. So again, given my mindset, I want to get rid of that squiggle. Now, this particular incident of this code base, I actually was inspired to do this video because of, again, something that happened in the real world, some discussion that took place on one of my teams. And I said, you know what, this is a good enough video to make. It's short enough, but also conveys the point exactly. And this applies to, I don't know if you've already figured this out, but applies to pretty much every video I've made. It all comes from my real world experiences. So I'm not making things up, if you will. And so this is one of those videos. And so the discussion here was, well, let's just, you can get rid of that, right? Just do that. So you call the safe call or the null conditional operator saying, okay, then just do it conditionally, call it. If this can't be null, then do that. But now I've altered the meaning of my code way too much. Right. First of all, I made the member variable nullable, which in my mind is not. So I'm already deviating from my intent. I'm not able to convey my intent clearly. Then over here, what I'm doing is, see, the code works and the warnings have disappeared, and most programmers say, oh, cool, I got rid of that warning, great, I'm done, right? I don't know, if sometimes I feel so frustrated with this sort of thing because the thought process is, of course, the initial problem. The fact that you didn't recognize that you have now changed your intent of your own code here ends up being the other sort of contention, a bone of contention of the frustration. We need to think harder about the code we write. We need to stay away from wanting to be safe. At least that's how I see it. This deep desire to be safe. Stop that. Don't be safe. Just don't worry about that stuff because that's what's going to get you into trouble. Right? So the need to be safe is the genesis of the reason for why some of this stuff happens. Be true to your intent, but think clearly about the code you're writing and the intention you have. What is your intent? What would somebody else that reads your code understand from the code you just wrote? Because the code is talking to you. So what's it saying? What's it saying to you? What would it say to somebody else who doesn't have any idea what your intention is, right? Would it say the same thing? That's what you want to be focused on. No warnings here. But is it saying the same thing? It's saying to me here that this could be potentially null, so I'm just going to call this with the null conditional operator. But are you really saying that you don't care if this gets logged? Is it okay that log will not take place? This logging is an example. I mean, this happens everywhere in actual other sort of code, not stuff that is doing log, but actual code that's calling things and setting values, right? That is not your intention. You're not really saying that the logging in this case is optional, right? In the sense that there was an actual method, let's say over here, before this, that say, actually insert the data into your database and then log the fact. In my mind, that logging is not an optional thing. You want to log each time you do an insert, let's say, just as an example. Then logging is not an optional thing. Then why do you put the question mark dot? Because that's what you're saying to me with code like that it's okay that if the logger is null, just ignore it. Don't log. I'm cool with that. But yeah, insert the data in the database. Just don't log it. No, that's not your intention. Your intention really, or it should be, the way I would say it, is that this logging over here is not an optional thing. So if this thing is null, well, too bad. You can't do this. The problem is somewhere else. Fix that. Like this is not the reason to make this optional. You can't put the question mark dot here, even though it's solving the problem, or it's not giving you the warning here anymore. It's highlighting another problem. Don't fix it here at the site where you're seeing the symptom. Fix the root cause. All right. So if you agree with that, then it's okay. Then what do we do to fix this? Now, unfortunately, with the way the language feature is currently, the non-nullable reference types feature is in language, there's no real way to actually get around that. One way could be that we could use define an operator. This is not about the non-nullable reference types, by the way, but let me just show you what I'm thinking or how I'm thinking about this. I would say, okay, you can just say not null here. There's a attribute not null. It won't get rid of this warning here, I don't believe. Yes, it's still saying it's not been initialized here, but over here it's no longer giving me that warning. So that's one way to kind of do that. But it's useless. This is not the intention of this attribute. What you could do is you could suppress the warning here. Okay, so now that that's been suppressed, you don't see this error here either. That's, in many ways, that is my intention. As I'm saying, yes, I understand this variable is not nullable. I've not initialized it in the construct, and I'm cool with that. Right? I'm okay with that. So you could use that, and I wish there was a way in C# to actually do that with the, like the bang operator, the null forgiving operator, or the null suppression operator, which again I think is not quite where it's supposed to be or should be. I would have preferred to do something like that, saying yes, it is nullable. It's not nullable, and I know it's not nullable, so just let me do this, but there's no option for that. The other option is to leave this like that. And, well, what you'll end up with here, instead of the null conditional operator, is you can have the null forgiving operator. And that's probably one other solution in this scenario where it's still altering the meaning of what you're doing here. So I really have a problem with this, right? This is where I have a problem. I'm not intending to say this, that this is nullable, but I've now set it to be nullable. That's not my intention. But I can still get around it using the exclamation dot instead of the question mark dot. The question mark dot was altering my intent, but the null forgiving and null suppression operator is saying just suppress the warning. Let me just do what I want to do without you telling me there's a warning here. So it's still solving this problem as it's not changing my intention here, but I am changing the intention here. This is not what I intended. So that's all I had for this video. I hope this is conveyed to you that the null conditional operator is something to be watchful of. Don't misuse it, don't abuse it, don't overuse it. Use it only if and when it is required. And that means you need to think about your code. You need to think about your intention. Will this thing ever be null, or am I just being safe about it? And don't be safe. there's no benefit to being safe. Honestly, it's just causing more trouble. Is passing the buck, if you will, downstream. It's hiding the true nature of the problem, and it's showing up as another problem somewhere else. Just don't do that sort of thing, right? So, and if you need to, you can also watch the other videos on my programming with intent series. Start with the first one. That itself will probably blow your mind, and then go on to the others. All right. I hope you've enjoyed this video and hope you've learned a few things. If you have, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.